Hey, Sean, it's been a year, so let's talk about the Aputure 300D Mark II. With any 1 year later review, it's a product that I've used for at least 12 months and on at least 12 different full-scale productions. So these are my thoughts after using this thing in the field for a year. This thing has 4 main pros and really 3 main cons. So number 1, this thing is bright. It's very bright. If that's its job, it does its job well. This thing can balance next to a window and it can light up a whole scene at night if you need to, make it look like moonlight's coming in. This thing can put out some serious output, and it does it pretty quietly too, which is impressive. So as far as a bright single color light goes, I'm impressed. Number 2 pro, it's pretty compact. I mean, relatively speaking, compared to other lights like some HMIs that are out there and things like that, the light consists of this box, which is the whole light, and this box, which is the ballast and power source combined into one unit. So they are beefy products, but you don't have a light, a ballast, and a power block all as separate little items that you have to tether together with 3 or 4 cords. This has 2 cords, one from the light to the power source, and then one from the power source to the power. It's a pretty convenient setup. You don't have things dangling all over the place. You don't have ballasts hanging from light stands or anything like that. The cord will go from this all the way down to the floor where this heavy little beast can sit, or this does clip to a light stand. So it's a pretty clean setup, and I appreciate that of it. Pro number 3 is a small one. It's the remote. Now, these remotes work across all the Aputure products, which is kind of nice, and you can create 3 different ecosystems, and within those you can have different channels and lights. You can dim and turn everything on and off. You can assign things to different groups, so I can have one set of lights turn off while the other one stays on, and I can dim one or the other, or individual lights within there. So it's pretty convenient that you can control that all from the remote. It's not a huge deal on a lot of bigger sets to walk around, or you have someone dedicated to adjusting your lights while your DP looks at the monitor. But if you're in a smaller crew or shooting one-man band, it is helpful to be able to stand back, or stand in your own camera frame, look at your monitor, and adjust the brightness by just pressing a button without having to walk over, check it, come back in a frame, look again, and then keep going back and forth. So the remote ends up making a huge difference, and it just works. I've never had an issue with the remote not working. It's also fun to mess with interns and production assistants by putting it in your pocket, and when they go to move a light, you turn the light off and they think that they've broken it. I do that way more often than I probably should. The 4th great thing about this Aputure ecosystem is all of the modifiers that they have available, and it's pretty compact and they're pretty well built. After using them for a year, all of them have ripped in some way. I will be honest about that, but the fact that all these things exist and can go back and forth clipping on from light to light really simply is a convenience, and I'm able to use them on other branded lights as well. I got a Pro Photo adapter for the lantern, and now I use it on my Hive 200CX, and I have no issues with that. So they're versatile beyond just the Aputure lights. There's nothing proprietary about the lights, connectors, and the modifiers. And now the cons. Now, I have had a roller coaster of a relationship with Aputure over the past couple years. And at first, I really liked them. I had a 120D that I really liked, and then I got the 300D Mark II a little over a year ago. And I've enjoyed the lights, except both of my good lights broke, and these lights were $1,000. I mean, the 120D when I got it was around $750, plus you buy a $150 modifier and a few of those, so you're looking at $1,000 for a light. And for the 300D, you're looking at least $1,500 for a hard light, plus the diffusion and things like that. And so that cost is the first thing of, compared to some other lights, the Aputures are expensive, and I don't know how they made it as this like YouTuber's go-to light of like, oh, we all get Aputures, because they're really expensive. And compared to other lights that you would rent or anything like that, they're more expensive. It's not like they're this cool budget option. they're pretty expensive. If you want a cool budget option, there's a bunch of stuff out there from Godox and Neewer and stuff that is pretty good. But there's even a lot of stuff from Quasar and Hive that is the same price, if not way cheaper, for the same output of light, with even more flexibility as far as color and things like that. So the cost of a single color hard source light, I do find a little prohibitive, and I wish, looking back, that I maybe would not have invested the almost $3,000 in 2 Aputure lights just for those 2 lights. It's a lot for a little. Number 2 is really where that roller coaster took its first big dive downward. These lights were great as far as bringing me to a new level of production because I had good bright lights that I could bring on set and do interviews with. Everything instantly got better with the addition of these lights. However, these lights are really unreliable. My 120D broke after a year, and my 300D broke after a month and a half. The control box on my 120D went out, and I had to go 12 rounds with support, and they were being really unhelpful about it. And then one of the cables shorted out for my 300D Mark II, and that too was just a nightmare of getting this cable replaced and troubleshooting it, improving, sending videos of it not working just to get a replacement cable. And I take exceptional care of my cables. And so the fact that this thing broke after a month and a half was really upsetting. And it broke on a shoot. It just, I plugged it in, it was working, and then I moved the light to the other side. We flipped the setup, and it just never turned on again. And that unreliability caused some serious problems on that set. So it put me in the place where, moving forward after that point, I always brought other lights where, yes, it was convenient with you know, the fewer cables for this light setup, but if they didn't work, I'm not in a good place. So I stopped having confidence in these lights being like the 1 or 2 lights that I would bring to a gig, because there were times where both of them did not turn on. And lastly, my third con isn't unique to this Aputure system, but I think it's a big part of why people buy these lights and the misunderstanding. And I've made a few videos about this, but I think people buy these lights thinking, oh, this is gonna, you know, take me to the next level. And it does in a lot of ways, but it's really expensive to get a light and the modifiers from Aputure like this, where again, it's $1,500 to get a single light with the appropriate diffusion to be able to be used in an actual interview. And there's other lights out there that are cheaper, that are softer, using some different panels, can skip the whole step of needing a $150 diffuser, and it gets a very similar light on your subject, especially if you put a $20, you know, diffuser in front of that. You end up with a really, really sweet light that costs you way less. And so I've been falling in love with Quasar, and I've made several videos about that. I know that. And they've reached out, full disclosure, to potentially in the future work together to give me some lights. And I want to be upfront about that. This isn't sponsored by them or anything. But if every time you use the light, you have to diffuse it and add this stuff, then why do you need a hard single source light that is single color? This is just a daylight balance light. And I know that they've come out with the 300DX, which is bicolor, but there's so many opportunities where you need to do more than just bicolor. And there's a lot of lights out there for around the same price that maybe aren't quite as bright, but they're way more flexible. And for me, looking back a year later, there's a lot of situations where having one bright 6,000 Kelvin light wasn't the right light for the shoot, and I wish I had, even if it wasn't as bright, a light that was more flexible with its color temperature, and ultimately a light that was more reliable for those shoots. So a year later, yes, they took me to another level, but I think there were other lights that would have been better for me and a better investment, and I don't know that I would advise anyone who's in a position that I was in when I first got these lights a couple years ago. I don't know that I would advise anyone to go down that same path. I think I would say explore some options from Quasar, from Westcott, and from Hive before going this route. I don't like making sad or negative reviews, but I had some rough times with Aputure, and I see a lot of people just diving on it and thinking they're great, and a year later, I'm left wanting more. That's all I got. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments below. See you later. Bye.